Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell, where we talk about real life, challenge assumptions, and explore different ways of being in the world. This week, we have Dr. Sophie Fletcher, a dear friend of mine from grad school and just generally a brilliant human being. We'll be talking about Sophie's journey through spirituality and somatics and how that led her to the work she currently does with clients, including the interesting work of human design. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy episode 12. Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell, where we talk about real life, challenge assumptions, and explore different ways of being in the world. This week for episode 12, we have Dr. Sophie Fletcher, a dear friend of mine from grad school. And we're going to be talking about Sophie's journey through spirituality and somatics and how that led her to the work she currently does with her clients, including the interesting work of human design. And we'll be going through my chart. So crazy. So a little bit about Sophie. Sophie earned her first master's degree in spiritual psychology at 24 years old. She then realized through her own journey that working through the body was the gateway to true healing. Agreed. Mm-hmm. Sophie went on to do a second master's and her PhD at Pacifica Graduate Institute in depth psychology with an emphasis in Somatic Studies, where her dissertation explored the interrelational dynamics of touch, which is an amazing piece of research. So if you're interested, I'll put her contact info and you can ask for it. Sophie is dedicated to helping people decondition themselves so that they may live more fully in alignment with their own truths. She does this through pulling on her many trainings in multiple bodywork modalities, primarily based in Chinese meridian theory, as well as breathwork, energetic clearing techniques, neuroaffective relational method, relational life therapy, and somatic experiencing. She combines all of this with her knowledge of human design, which she believes is a brilliant body-based system to help us navigate the world more easily. In all her work, she focuses on tapping into the innate wisdom of the client's own body and assisting with their own genius to come through with greater freedom. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I am super excited for the time that we're going to spend together.
Me too. I love you and I love what you're doing. I love what you're creating. So yeah, I'm super excited to get to be part of it for a little minute.
So I talked all about just now your professional accomplishments and building your business and all of that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Sophie and where you came from in the world and how you kind of got to where you're at?
Yeah, what a journey, life is. Every single person, what a journey.
Yeah.
So I was born in Pennsylvania outside of Philly. However, both my parents are English. And so I guess was technically known as first generation in America. But also grew up sort of we would be in England a lot. And then my parents actually met and married in Switzerland. So I grew up sort of between those three primarily. But then also just traveling a lot, especially the European mindset of you just travel a lot. That's just what you do. Why would you stay in one place? Why would you stay in one country? And I feel like that really piqued my interest at an early age of the variety of human experience. Just being from a young age around people very different from me or living very differently from me, speaking different languages. It was really informative and really interesting to me on how do people live? How do you create this thing called life that you're doing these choices and navigating everything? And so I think that kind of started this curiosity for me. And then I was brought up in a spiritual community. And so part of my upbringing was also a lot around that. But a lot of the teachings was around transcending the body, releasing the body, being above the body. And that was really helpful. And also in the end, not so helpful because it reinforced my own way of dealing with trauma was dissociation.
Oh gosh. So that's you need to here you are. And it's so good for you.
This. I'm a master meditator because I'm just not here. Like that works great. And so it was sort of helpful in terms of like helping me, move through things, especially like younger years that had more trauma or difficulties in it. And at the same time, then it became sort of maladaptive in terms of that it started reinforcing my own trauma responses and sort of getting like accolades for that. And so that's why I say I kind of had to do this switch, because I did philosophy and psychoanalysis in college at Colorado College. So I kind of went to Colorado, but then I knew I wanted to do this spiritual psychology master's right after. So hopped my way over to California. And I loved that program. I still use a lot of tools from it, but it was still a lot of not including the body. It was still a lot of sort of like outside, more esoteric stuff, which I still think is helpful. But I think that especially for somebody with my trauma response, again, it just reinforced that. And so I ended up right after that, I sort of got tricked into seeing this body worker. I kind of say like against my will. Like I was very, very like, no, I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the person that I was seeing at the time kind of like, it was like a tricky thing that he did, but I'm very grateful for it in the end. And so I met this teacher that I ended up working with for about 7 years. And he was an ex-Navy SEAL trained in Chinese meridian theory. And so I learned really deeply a lot of intense body work. So like one of the techniques, we're actually walking on the person's body, correlating with the different meridians. There's exercises, there's clearing techniques, all that. And then I just sort of like started learning about different ones, different modalities like Shinit Song and Jin Shin Jutsu, and training in like anything that I could kind of hear about at that time, because I was like, whoa, like there's so much in here. Like there's so much here. And so much of it is painful. Like, what do I do with this? How do I be here when it's so uncomfortable? And so I just started learning about that, and him and this other teacher was his wife. And so I ended up training with both of them for a long time, and they both utilized human design in their practices. Okay. And so I really got familiar with that because they would pull it in. And one big thing that I always remember is that the first time I ever saw my chart and this person looked at it to give me a reading, they were like, oh, you've been traumatized out of being yourself. So like looking at my design, it just felt so foreign. Like I was like, I don't relate to what you're saying. Like, I don't understand. Yeah. And they were like, oh, this is what happened. Like, you've been trained, you've been conditioned to be different than your actual chart because it wasn't safe to be myself. So that really got me really, really intrigued with that dynamic, like what human design could sort of illuminate around those things. And it's such a body-based system that it felt like it just sort of like aligned with where I was already going more deeply into the body. And then, Pacifica, we ended up together
that whole journey.
Through that whole program, and it was funny because I think I've told you this, but I wasn't looking for a PhD program.
Neither was I. They just in.
No, it was like the weirdest, because I was even, 6 or 7, my parents were pulled aside with myself being there, and they were told that I was so severely dyslexic that I wasn't going to graduate high school, let alone college.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I did not know that.
Which was pretty hard for like 2 very smart parents.
Yeah.
Like intelligence is very important to my parents, and they identify with that. So of course that was really difficult. And I give a lot of props to my mom, who was just like, I don't accept.
Good. Good for
You're
her.
not putting that in any kind of like paperwork. You're not licensed, basically, because she was but she was a teacher. Like, she wasn't licensed to diagnose.
I also, like, honestly, like, I've heard multiple stories about like things like that. And I think of my grandma, I think this, shame on you. Is what I want to say. Like, shame on you. Like, how dare you like limit somebody in that way? Because, like, I mean, you could have easily heard that and been like, whatever, I'm gonna go play in the dirt for the rest of my life. You know, like, and then we wouldn't have amazing Dr. Sophie Fletcher.
Like 6, you know,
Yeah.
like what? I'm 6. Like, how do you know anything about me as 6?
Right.
But it's also like, I also really believe that it was, for better or worse, a certain amount of motivation.
Yeah.
Like, those wounds can also be very catalyzing of like, screw you. Like, I'm going to, you know,
I mean, that's something we have in common.
Right. And I mean, even that was part of my like going to Colorado College, was because I already knew about the spiritual psychology master. So I was like, well, but I have to. But I have to go to college because I want to do this thing. So like, I have to. Right. So I just taught myself, because I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. So I just had to teach myself how to at least, you know, feign learning how they wanted me to learn and present like how they wanted me to present academically.
So it's so painful to think about.
So crazy.
God, the world, I tell you.
Don't learn the way that it actually works for you.
Right?
Learn how they told you to learn, and then just pretend like that worked for you.
Yeah.
But really, you're learning an entirely different way.
You know, I've often shared, I'm much more comfortable with it now because I feel more successful in my life. But like, I've always had a really hard time with math. And in high school, I had to take algebra 4 times to get a C-. And the last time, like, I always got the right answer, but I couldn't tell you how or why or where it came from. And because I wouldn't do all the steps and everything like that, they would fail me. And the last teacher finally like pulled me up to the board, one-on-one, and gave me a problem. And he's like, solve this on the board. And I would skip like 3 steps at a time, right? And he would be like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, is it the right answer? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, so why do we care? Like, I don't understand. So he finally passed me with a C- and was basically like, just get out of algebra. Like, don't come back. And then when I went to school in the military, we had to do like advanced algebra because I ran weapon systems, right? So for weapons trajectory and all of that, I was terrified. But in the military, they didn't care how I got the answer. They're like, just get the answer. I finally and I did I did great, right? I was at the top of my class. And so I finally just accepted, like, this is how I do things. But like, as a kid, oh my God, I felt so stupid because I didn't fit the box. It's just crazy, the limitations we put on our kids, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the books that really like changed my mind was by Sir Ken Robinson. And he's had a few, and I can't remember the title of the one I'm referring to, but he talks a lot about creativity. And in this particular book, he was going through different stories of people who it could have gone very differently. But basically, like, they learned differently than other people, or they presented differently. Like, he tells the story that really hit me of this little girl was told, you know, you can't be successful at school, you're dumb, all of those things. And I think she was like 8 or 9. And her mom,
heartbreaking.
Oh, and you know, ADD, ADHD, like all like the labels or whatever. So her mom takes her to this therapist and is like, you know, she needs medication, blah, 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 blah. The doctor is like talking to her for a little bit. And then he was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave the room with your mom for a little bit. And then we'll come back and discuss some more stuff. Can you wait here? And the little girl's like, yeah. As he leaves, he turns on music. They walk outside and he has a 2-way mirror. and they start watching her, she gets up and she's just dancing.
Oh.
And he was like, nothing's wrong with her. She's a dancer. Like, put her in dance class. And she ended up being, I can't even remember her name now, but it was like, she's one of the top choreographers of all times. Like, she's the choreographer from like Cats and like, things where it's like iconic pieces that impact thousands of people.
Yeah.
And you know, like, what would have happened
if she didn't go to that doctor
to see that? And he was just like, oh, let's just, you know, quell that. Let's just make it work to be in the system, versus like, put her in dance class.
Right.
She's a dancer. Like, he could just like feel something in her body, I guess. And like, you know, those people can go deeper, who can go into those depth places with people and really feel what's happening. Anyway, you know, ended up at Pacifica, and it was mainly because I read the description of the course, and, you know, just to call myself out, I didn't know what the word somatic meant.
I mean, back then, it doesn't, like, I hate to be like back then, but we started in 2015.
It was 10 years ago. Now it's freaking everywhere. Now it's like the buzzword that everybody uses, and everybody's a somatic, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. But like, back then, nobody used that word.
Right.
So I literally highlighted it and put it in Google.
Yeah.
And was like, what is this? And then it's, you know, the alive body, the lived body experience. And I was like, oh, it's a PhD in what I'm already doing. And I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
You know, just make it fancier. I'm on board. You know, and I found the course and I looked it up, and I just remember reading the course descriptions and being so excited to learn all the stuff. And then I went to the Pacifica experiencing weekend where you get to like hang out. And I mean, I was done. I was so in love with that campus. And I remember talking with Elizabeth Nelson and what was her name? She was one of our professors. She was our chair in the beginning, I think. And then she left.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I really liked her. And I can't remember her name.
I even know she's up in Washington. She does acupuncture and Cutter. Anyway, she's cool. And so we were sitting around and talking, and they were like, there was another person there, and they were like, well, I don't, you know, I want to go to this program, but it's so expensive. And like, they were very upset about how expensive it was. And they were like, well, what about you? And I was like, I don't care. I'm figuring it out. I just want to go here. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah, like, I know it's expensive, but I'm just going to find it. I'm going to find the money. We're going to make it work. I'm going to school here. I mean,
yeah, and I feel like it really is like a calling. And I joke with people, because there are people who reach out and be like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about doing a PhD, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, just as a heads up, I'm going to be the person who tries to dissuade you from doing it. I'm going to be asking all the hard questions. I'm basically going to tell you that you should absolutely not do a PhD.
Right. Last resort.
Because and the intention is, and I say this because the intention is, if I can dissuade you, you won't make it.
Absolutely.
Like, it is so freaking hard. It is, like, you know, like we ended up having, you know, those like calls.
It was like every
end of our dissertation thing. And it was like, oh my, how do we do this?
Yeah.
You know? And like, I really feel like it's like, if this sort of like either friend or random person can dissuade you from doing it,
you don't have enough passion to survive.
You're not gonna make it through. Because
somebody told me
a deeper calling. Like, it can't be just this intellectual, like, oh, I just want to get my PhD, like, how fun, whatever, I'll just do it. Like, no, it needs to be like I went to the Pacifica, I don't even remember what it was, but it was just like an evening talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with somebody, a guy friend, who was looking at Pacifica. I wasn't looking at schools, as I was saying. Like, it was not in my, like, I know I was done with academia after the
universe was like,
and I went with him because he was like, oh, I just think they're talking about things that like would be interesting. And I was like, cool, I like Santa Barbara. Let's go for a drive. And literally the whole night they were talking about like how important the body is and the unconscious and all this stuff. And I was like, what is happening? And then we were driving home and he was like, you're so quiet. Like, what is going on? And I was like, I think I'm going back to school. Like, I was like, I don't know what's happening. I'm very confused right now. And it's kind of fucking with me. And then I got home and I'm looking at the website and my eyes kept going to the somatic program. And again, as I said, I didn't know what the word was. So I was like, what is this? So then I look it up. I sent my application at 3 a.m. in the morning. It was freaking night. Like, I was like, and like, it's literally like, I look back and I'm like, what were you doing? Like, what? Like, I'm so like, I feel like I'm generally pretty methodical in things. It is that, like, it's that deeper, like, oh, this is just, it just has to happen. This just, it's going to happen.
It's just meant to be.
I have to make it work. I don't know how. It's 3 a.m. I don't know what on earth I'm doing, but like, this is happening kind of thing. And I feel like, yeah, it was just like, all right.
Well, and you know, like, so based on like the earlier part of your journey that you were sharing, like you were completely focused on, so I'm going to bring the chakra system in because I know it has to do a little bit with human design, right? So you were operating in the top half of your chakra system. Like you were ungrounded and you were all up here, you know, the top 3. And then what you needed to create that balance in your life and help you heal your trauma was that wholeness, which is the lower half of the system, which Pacifica, I think they're with the depth and the somatic, they did such a beautiful job of blending. Like, I mean, oh my God, I loved the program, loved it. But
which I think is the goal too. Like, I think it is, and I would assume you'd agree with this, and it's sort of like, you do need all of it.
Yes, that's wholeness, right?
Yeah, like it's not like, just the body, and it's not just consciousness work or mental work or whatever. It's like, you need all of it.
Because that is the lived experience.
All of it.
That's the lived all of it. Yes, you can't have like one, and when you have one without the other, you are not able to show up as that beautiful, unique representation of who you are and contribute to the world in the way that's most meaningful for you and everyone around you. Like you need to be the whole picture. It's like having a painting and cutting half of it off and being like, you can have this piece because this is the most important. You're like, what's on the other half?
And it's like, well, all right.
What's on the other half? Don't worry about it. We've decided it's not important for you. That's Cartesian dualism. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, just to bring in the human design piece, like I feel like that's what sort of human design illuminated for me was like, yes, we have access to all of these things. And even in somebody's chart, it's like, we have access to all of it because it's all there. And there's different transits and there's different times and there's different activations depending on which people you're with and like all these different dynamics. And at the end of the day, like there's a certain blueprint or body graph that they call it that's like your natural energy or your natural way of being in the world. And it's really just about focusing on the individuality. So one of my favorite things is that human design is also known as the science of differentiation. And so it flies in the face of so many dogmas or so many sort of blanket statements and is like, no, you're you. Yeah. Like this is how your energy could work, or this is how things might flow more easily in your life. It's not like, oh, this is just sunshine and rainbows at all times, but it's like, this is just how you know your vehicle. Like we just have certain ways of being, certain personality traits or certain, like our aura, things like that, that it's like, if we just know a little bit more about it, it's like we can work with it more rather than sort of like, oh, I'm supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to be like this person, or I'm like, they did X, Y, and Z. Why is that not working for me? And it's like, well, you're a different type. Like, or you, why would you think that the same thing would work? Like, so I just really love that it brings that back in, and it is so body based, but it really encompasses sort of like the whole energy system within someone.
So I am really interested to hear about how it is so body based, because I don't know about that. Not as a challenge or a question. Like I literally don't know about that. Because I've read about human design years, it's been, oh my God, it's probably been like 4 or 5 years. You did my chart for me and we chatted about it, but it was like, over charcuterie or something. Like a glass of wine.
Generally, like if anybody comes over to our house, it's like we have their chart pulled up, and because my husband and I are both into it, so it's just like this is just what different conversation.
Oh, you don't have your chart? Let me get your chart really quick. Yeah. And so I've looked into it here and there, and I think it's really cool. I have the assessments I like to give with clients, but I think all of them offer such a unique perspective and come from a different place. And it's kind of like, I talk about, like, when I was a leadership trainer, I remember they would say to me, oh, so this is the flavor of the month, is it? Like, because, they loved going to leadership training in corporate America. And I'd say, yeah, this is the flavor of the month, because you know what? Every different style of leadership training will resonate with a different person. Yeah. So maybe this isn't for you, but maybe it's for them. And maybe they were lost until now, and now they're finding what they need. And they were just like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. So I think the same thing with like a lot of these assessments is that we are such unique and different people. And so it's not about like gathering the results of assessments, right? But it's finding the one that resonates with you so that you can better understand your more natural self and create a life that supports that version of you, which is what I think is so cool about both of our work, is very much in alignment with that. So body-based. Tell me about human design.
Well, I'll start at the beginning because it has like kind of a funny, not a funny, but a weird, I had to sort of get over how it started.
Okay.
I had my own judgments on sort of like how this came to be. But it was this guy, and he sort of was on this like walkabout. He was in Ibiza, and he tells this story that he came home one day, and in his little like cabin, the light was on and the door was open as he came home. And he was like, he hadn't left it that way. So he was confused. And he walked in, and as he walked in, the door shut behind him on its own. And this voice came to him. And he wrote what he was getting from this voice for 8 days and 8 nights. And then he started teaching, or he's like, people were asking him about it and things. And so he started teaching it. And then I don't know how long it was, but at some point he was like, I don't want to do this. This is too much responsibility. I'm out. And he told everybody to burn everything.
Oh my gosh.
And he disappeared.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And then he comes back like, sometime later, and he's like, just kidding. Now, luckily, there had been like enough sort of rebellious students who were like, we're not burning this. Like, this is amazing information. And so it's been like piecing it back together and kind of reorganizing everything. But basically, it's a system that takes into consideration 4 more like esoteric sciences and 2 more modern sciences. So it takes into account astrology, the 9-centered Hindu chakra system, the I Ching, and Kabbalah. And then it also takes into account, the 64 DNA codons and neutrinos.
Cool.
So it combines all of these things into this body graph that sort of prints out with your general birth information, like time, place, date, all of that fun stuff. And it's really, so the body-based piece is when you're looking at a chart, there will be 2 lines of numbers on either side. So one side is going to be red, most likely. Now there's people who are like sort of creating their own sites that create body graphs and things like that. And so their colors are different. But if you're looking at it on a screen, it's going to be the left side will generally be red. If it's a different color, it's just a different color. But it's on the left is going to be the unconscious.
Okay.
And that comes into existence 88 days before you're born. And it generally correlates more with your body.
Okay.
It's going to be more of like your physical experience. The next side, your right side, is generally going to be in black colors, or whatever color they're using. But the right side comes online as soon as you're born. So that's why the time is really important. And that's going to be more of your personality, more of your conscious side.
I'm totally taking notes, just so you know. Carry on.
Great. So the left side is generally, because it's more of the unconscious, more of the shadow, more of the body. It's generally how other people will describe you.
Okay.
Versus the black side, which is more of the conscious, the personality side, that's going to be more how you describe yourself.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, as you do more self-awareness work, more self-excavation, more, you get more comfortable with your unconscious, with your shadow, all of that, then it starts blending more and you start really feeling all of it.
Okay.
So that's where it's really fun. But then the body-based piece. So there's this, in one of the parts of human design, there's what's known as authority. And this is probably one of my favorite parts of a design, because it's a unique way that you make decisions. Not a single person is designed to make decisions just from their mind.
Well, yeah.
Not a single person.
But we're taught that.
Not an authority.
Western society teaches that, but no. Yes, I agree.
Yes, right?
Yeah, not
so
true.
There's one type that's called a mental projector. They're still not designed to make decisions from their mind. They're designed to talk it out and get clarity as they speak in their own tone and how they're talking about it.
Gotcha.
The mind, because we do have a mind center in the human design chart, the mind is for coming up with lists, analyzing things, ideas, inspiration, all that, which is great. It's wonderful. We need that in life, but it's not where we make the decision. So all of the other awareness centers within the body, all of these authority pieces are bodies. So it's either most people are going to be, well, I can't say most people, but there's these sort of like different pieces. So some people will have splenic authority. So splenic authority it's like that quiet voice that like whispers something. And it's generally around like if you're safe or not. So the spleen is always sort of like navigating the surroundings. Like I say that people with splenic authority, they can be in like, New York City and look down a dark alley. And if they're listening to their spleen, they could be like, oh, I'm safe to go down there. Because they would know, like their body would be like, da-da-da. But then they could go into like a really nice restaurant or, some party or something and like immediately be like, I don't want to be here for whatever reason. And I've literally heard this save people's lives.
So let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It sounds to me like what you're describing is gut instinct.
So
okay.
Yes,
yeah.
And I will say, so the spleen is a little bit more of what they would call like intuition.
Okay.
Like it's like this little like voice that happens and it only speaks once. And the more you listen to it, the more you can hear it.
Okay.
Then there's another authority called sacral authority.
That's what I have.
So sacral authority. No, you're actually
I'm solar plexus. Yeah.
You do have, so you actually have all three of these. So what's fun about that is that you actually have access to all three of these. Okay. The caveat to that is that the emotional center for you is your actual authority. So while you can hear all these things, it's still reliant on the emotional authority. So I'll go over that a little bit. But the sacral authority, that you do have access to, it's just not your like end.
Right.
Like I kind of say when people have all three, it's kind of like a filter system.
Understood. Okay.
And the filter gets like tighter and tighter as you go down to like get the final, mega boss answer.
Right.
I think like Mario or
video
whatever.
Game. Yeah.
Like go through all these things and you get to like the final boss.
Right.
That's like for you, that's the emotional center.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so the sacral center is that gut instinct. So it's a guttural response, and it's usually like, it's not usually going to use yes or no. It's going to use a noise. So an and it's usually like there's going to be a movement with the body.
Okay.
Like it's very much like yes, no. If you see like I'm moving forward with a yes or reclining with a no. My favorite is when like a generator type which will only be the type that has the sacral authority, gets excited, and it's like the whole body lights up. Like their arms go up, their legs spread. Like it's literally like something like electric moved through their body.
Are you watching me when I eat, Sophie?
It's so fun because I'm not a generator type, so I don't have that sacral thing. So when I'm around it, it's like, oh, that's exciting. Like that's so fun. But so anyway, so people who have this authority, I say like get out of the process of using yes and no and try to feel into your own system. Like what is your noise? Like, what is your body? What's the sound that it organically makes? And oftentimes as kids, we did this. And then we're trained out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
The sort of thing that a parent will say is like, don't use noises, use your words. Mm-hmm. Well, that like, might be yours. Like it's like we naturally make these noises.
Gotcha. That's cool.
So it's like kind of like, as I say, like deconditioning, like the conditioning is like, no, you have to use your words. Deconditioning is getting back to yourself of like, what's my natural yes and no? Mm-hmm. What's my noises? What's the body feel like as I get these responses? So then we move over, and then there's emotional authority. Mm-hmm. So emotional authority is 50% of the population. So 50% are defined and 50% aren't. If you have this center defined, you are automatically emotional authority because it sort of like supersedes all the others.
The mega boss.
Like the big boss. Like it's like the main, like, again, it's like you have, because you personally have spleen definition and you have sacral definition and you have emotional definition. So as I'm saying, it's like that sieve, like your spleen might be like, yes. And you're like, okay. And then you move to the sacral and your sacral's like, and you're like, okay. But then you have to wait. You still have to wait for the emotional. So the emotional center, and I'm emotional authority as well. The emotional center exists on a wave. So think of emotions. Mm-hmm. Emotions are just energy. It's just energy moving through our bodies.
Right.
So our emotional center, the main thing is there's no clarity in the now. Is clarity over time because the wave has to move through our systems. Like we may want to say yes, but we're on a high of a wave. So on the high of a wave, you pretty much want to say yes to everything. Right. Because you're like, life's amazing. It's wonderful. I'll do whatever. And then you'll kind of like, naturally there's going to be a progression into a low. And in the low, generally, you want to say no to everything because you're like, I pretty much just want to stay in bed and not do anything ever again in my life. So it's like, depending on where you are in your wave, you don't want to respond in that moment. You want to wait because you want to feel the decision on the high and the low and in between. And eventually there's like a calm that happens in your body.
So I did some reading on my chart before this podcast, right? So the one thing that I thought was really interesting that it said about my type from some generic website, which are always 100% accurate, right? Of course. Yeah, that was sarcasm, just in case you didn't pick it up. Is it talked about like the biggest thing I have to be careful of is that I need to respond to life.
Yes.
And so this is what you're talking about, right? Okay.
Yes and no. So that's actually because you're a generator.
Okay.
So we'll go into the types too, but the emotional authority is really, you're responding to life through your emotional authority for you personally and anybody who's emotionally defined. So there's other authorities, but those are the three main ones that people will have. And then they sort of get less and less frequent as you go on. So we'll just stop with that one. But yeah, the emotional authority is 50% of the population, and it's really about waiting. So it's when you get that email or that text and you want to respond right away, like,
ride the wave, see what happens.
Wait. And it's really about learning to surf the waves, because it's really becoming okay with, there's going to be this natural up and down throughout all of life for us as emotionally defined people. And the low isn't bad, the high isn't good. It's just a different experience.
That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, and for making decisions, it's not like, what do I want to eat tonight? Oh, I have to wait 24 hours to make my decision between the high and the low of my wave. Like there's life that's happening.
I'm fasting because I'm on a low.
Right. Like, yeah, that's fine. But it's like the large decisions, the like larger things in life, you want to wait them out. You want to feel yourself through the entirety of your wave as you're making this decision. Okay. So that's the big one that is, again,
I gotta ask,
in the face of so much that we're taught. No, go with your gut instinct, immediate response. If you're emotional authority, which again is 50% of the population, like, no, you're supposed to wait. So most of my responses are, I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Right. And I used to tell people, I learned, oh my gosh, years ago when I was still in corporate, right? And I don't know where I learned this. So much learnings. At a certain point, they all blur together. But I would be in like boardrooms with important, scary people, right? And they'd be like, we need this answer, blah, 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 blah. And like, I would say, well, I can give you an answer, but if you want the best one, I need some time and I'll have to get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And 98% of the time, they'd be like, that's fine. And I was like, so I can just be like, no. Yeah. And it changed everything. But you're right, like allowing yourself time to like properly like see, and even like my conditioning, I want to say properly think about it. But it's not just thinking, it's properly being with it. Being
being with it. And it's also like it takes a certain amount of like self-esteem and self-confidence, as well as that self-awareness to be able to say that.
Right. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because there is that fear of like, oh, if I don't give the answer right now, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, like I say to people when they're asking me something and they want a commitment right then, and I'm like, then my answer is no. But if you'd like to wait for a yes, then I can give it to you tomorrow. Like it might change, but like if you're going to pressure me, it's a no.
Right.
For me, because you're not honoring myself. I honor myself. Myself is like top priority. I need time and I need space to make decisions.
Yep. And that does, like you said, it takes,
this isn't going to work.
It takes growing that self-esteem. And I think a big part of like what contributes to that, which I'm sure you agree, is that it's the work that you do on yourself and the higher level of self-awareness. Like I tell people a lot of the majority of the work that I do with clients is helping them get to know who they are so they can support themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple. Like let's figure out who you are and what you need and then support that amazing human, you know?
And that's they're the ultimate authority of themselves. Like I don't know you better than you know yourself. You've been alive in yourself this whole time. Like, how am I supposed to know you better?
Exactly.
You know, like it's like I can look at your human design chart, I can illuminate certain things or whatever, but like at the end of the day, like it's your experience.
You just might have forgotten.
Exactly. And even like in human design, they talk about a lot that it's the experiment.
Yeah.
So it's like, try these things out. Feel into like, ooh, do I have a wave? What is it like to wait for my wave?
Right.
If it doesn't work for you, throw it out. I don't care. It's not personal. Like, like at the end of the day, like as you're saying, like I feel like my job is just to like offer things, offer insights or perspective or certain things, and like, but again, you're the authority. Like I don't know. So like,
this is why we get along. Because I always tell people, I'm like, this is an Adrianism, or this is just information I'm sharing. Take what you want, leave the rest. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Like you got to do what's best for you. Yeah.
100%.
So,
Let's
okay.
look at types.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yep. Okay, the types
So
for human design.
So there's these 5 main types in human design, and this is really talking about the aura. So it's really talking about like your energy and how it maneuvers through the world and relates with others. So about 70% of the population is what's known as a generator type. So you're either a manifesting generator or a generator.
Okay.
Straight G or MG, basically. But basically what that means is that you have that sacral center that I was talking about defined. That makes you a generator type, because that sacral center is like the Energizer bunny of the world. Like it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. It's like the
sacral, not the solar plexus.
No, this is the sacral.
Interesting.
Sacral.
Okay.
Yeah. So the sacral center, this is like that the manifesting generator and the generator have the same kind of aura, and it's enveloping. So it's this aura that comes in and it's like a big hug for everybody, because it's this like energy that like you know, exudes from the being, and it's just lovely. But
You're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I really do believe, like, because yes, generators are supposed to respond to life. So you're asked things, or you're just in life, you're just living your life, and your design is to respond, because you're enveloping everything. And so as you envelop it, it's sort of feeling into like, do I like this? Do I not like this? And the compass to really be using for this, for the generator, manifesting generator types, is frustration versus satisfaction.
Took me a long time to figure that out, but I think I'm there.
It's like how the percentage in your life, basically, like you're going to have both. That's going to be a mix of both, because it's freaking life. But at the end of the day, it's like, do I have a higher percentage of satisfaction, or do I have a higher percentage of frustration? And I tell people, like, you know, like gratitude journals are so awesome. I say for generator types, like, try a satisfaction journal.
I got to tell you, I love these terms, because I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about like the relentless pursuit of happiness, and how like people are just turning themselves into like happiness junkies or addicts. And life is not about happiness. It's about satisfaction, right? Or fulfillment. And like there's a lot of times in my work, like my work is not happy. I study grief and suicide and some jacked up stuff. But I love it. And it's so fulfilling and satisfying. So I'm loving these terms.
Yeah. And that's like for you just to know, like, and those are going to depend on a little bit of like, are you saying yes to the things that are yeses? Are you saying no to things that are no's? Are you saying yes to things that are no's? Are you saying no to things that are yes?
Right.
When you're in alignment, saying yes to things that are yeses and no to things that are no's, it's going to be more frustration in your life. When you're saying yes, like, you know, like, it's like, did I say that correctly? Yes to yes things, no to no things, you're going to have more satisfaction. You're saying yes to things that are no's, or vice versa, it's going to be more frustration. So like when you're more in alignment with your actual responses. So the other thing is, because generator types, because of this sacral center and all this energy, a lot of the conditioning is around that you are worth what you do for others.
Right. Production.
Because it's like, I have the energy, I can do that. I have the energy, I can do that. What do you need me to do? I can do that for you. Globally, you want me to build this? You want me to create that? Well, I can do that. I can move this box for you. I can, you know, all these things. And it's really about getting back into your natural response, because your job is not to do for others.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. 100%. 100%. And the generator types are basically like the sunshine of the world, because you guys are the energy creators on the planet. And so I'm begging all generators, please, for the sake of us, quote unquote, non-energy types, please satisfy yourselves, please. We need you to, because so part of like the energies of the other types is like pulling in more of that sacral energy from you guys. So the more frustrated generators we have, which is the vast majority of generators on the planet right now, because you've all been conditioned to only do for others and to not listen to your natural responses of yes and no, we end up feeling that frustration.
Because we share it. We want to share all the things.
We're enveloping.
Right.
So like when I'm around a frustrated generator, it's like, oh, God, look, I'm frustrated.
Right. Of course.
And that's not my natural. So it's like, please satisfy yourselves. Please say no when it's a no. Please say no when it's a no.
So okay. As much as I want to just keep going through my chart because, it's selfish and fun. We don't have a lot of time left.
Yes.
So tell me about the other types.
So then there's projectors. I'm a projector. I am what's known as a 3-5 emotional projector. Obviously a lot of other things in a chart, but projectors are 20% of the population, about 20% of the population. And we are what's known as quote unquote non-energy types. Does not mean that we don't have energy. Obviously, I'm sitting here, I'm alive, I'm doing shit with my life. But it means that it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I have to wait for the waves of energy. I have to wait for something to like sort of like perk my energy up. And it's just becoming more comfortable with that natural ebb and flow of my energy. And that when I'm around sacral people, when I'm around generator types, I can tap into that, but it not for too long. So for projectors, it's really important for us to get really, really comfortable with it's not our like, worth on the planet is not how much we do. Our genius in the world is to be efficient. So like, how can we be efficient with the energy that we do have? And our role is to guide. So for me, the projector aura is penetrating. So my aura goes into the other person and then it feels deeply into them. And then my genius is to guide how they use their energy better.
So you're like basically living the way you were designed to live right now.
Basically.
Well done, Sophie. Well done.
You with it along the way. But like my joke is, so I'm married to a generator. And one day it was like early in our relationship and we knew all these things, but I'm, sitting there reading a book for, Pacifica or whatever. And we had stairs in our place and he went up and down the stairs like 7 times in an hour. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm exhausted watching you. Like, what are you doing? Just because for me, it's efficiency. Yeah. So like, if I go upstairs, I'm getting everything that I need for the day. It's a one-time deal because it's efficient. It's like, I'm going to plan everything out and then I'm going to make it happen. So part of like our other joke is like, he'll give me like a list of like his to-dos or whatever. And then I can kind of guide, oh, this is how this will work best if you do this and then you do that and blah, 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 blah. Versus like, he's just going to be like, I do this and then I go over here and then I do this. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you just drove like an extra 2 hours. You could have made like one loop instead of like, I'm going to all these places. Like, it's
well,
like,
I think this is a good example of how even if you're not that type, you can be that way. Because like as a generator, I am ridiculously efficient. Like I stack stuff on the stairs to get taken up as you go up, right? And I'm the person that like lumps errands and all of that. And so like you were saying, even though it's not my type, that doesn't mean I can't access it. It's just not
and
my
that's
natural
so
type.
that's what I love with human design is even if it's your type or not, it's like we have access to everything.
Right.
And it's really about developing all of the things within us.
Awesome. Yeah.
So you developing your own efficiency.
Having more access to more different ways of showing up.
Totally. So anyway, so that's the projector.
Okay.
Then there's manifestors, direct manifestors. So those types are the only type. Oh, and for projectors, we are designed, as you guys are designed to respond, we're designed to wait for the invitation.
Okay.
So you emailing me and being like, hey, Sophie, I know you're into this. Would you like to come speak on it?
Uh-huh.
It's like, that's an invitation. Oh, you want me to talk? You want me specifically to talk about this thing that I love and that I do? Yes.
Got it. Okay.
But it's different if I were to email you and be like, hey, I do this. Can I come on your podcast and do it?
Right.
That will generally, because of my type, meet with more resistance.
So, and that wouldn't be a generator thing either.
No, you're supposed
That
to
would
respond.
would that be a
That's where I'm thinking about it. So manifestors, they are the only type who are designed to initiate.
Okay.
So they're kind of like the ones who like go out and get it, make shit happen, but they're not the ones who are supposed to sort of build it. They're more of like the idea.
Got it.
Because they're not a non-energy, but they're not like it's sort of
totally like a poser manifester. I'm just saying.
So most generator types, and especially, I will say, especially MGs, so manifesting generators, want desperately to act like manifestors. The difference is, so manifesting generators, one of the big differences they have between generators and manifesting generators wait for a response. So they still have to wait for the response, but once they get an authentic response, they can then move into more of a manifestor energy.
See, I don't even have that though. I'm just a straight G.
But you might be conditioned around it. So that's where there's conditioning pieces where just because I have your chart up in my eyeline, it's like you have two gates that would make you a manifesting generator.
Interesting.
In your chart. So you're very close to being a manifesting generator. And so like even like sitting with me, you actually become a manifesting generator. So it's like those kinds of things where we can tap into these different energies and really kind of catalyze those. I'd even be curious about like if your roommate has it or whatever. And so you
of course, because then whoever we're spending time with is going to alter the way we show up in the world. Duh.
And they activate different things in our charts.
Yeah.
So it's really, I love doing like relational charts and stuff.
Yeah. Oh my
like
gosh.
figuring out like, what do you catalyze in this person? What do you need to be aware of? How do your dynamics work? How do you like, and really getting into the nitty gritty of like the differences between people, because I mean, I think this is huge it's been huge for my personal relationship with my husband, because we have very different charts because we're different people. But it's like, we'll look at each other's charts and it's like, oh, I'm trying to get you to be not you. Like, why am I doing that? Why am I hitting my head against a brick wall being like, you should be more like me, when you're literally designed differently? That doesn't make, like, it's just a waste of energy. Don't do that. But it's really that, like, that's why I love where it takes out the compare and contrast. And it gets rid of so much judgment.
So the last type.
So yeah. Oh, but just to finish on manifesting. So they're initiating. Their aura is fixed and repelling. And that sounds negative. I know it sounds negative.
Like, I'm a big hug and they're not.
But just see, you're enveloping. But so to think of it like these aura types are really designed to protect our energy. So manifestors have a limited amount. They don't have that sacral center defined. So they have a limited amount of energy, and they're really designed to make shit happen. So it's like their aura is fixed and repelling, and it's basically like either get on board or get out of my way.
Gotcha.
Like that's kind of what their aura is designed to do, to protect their energy. My aura projectors wait for the invitation is to protect my limited amount of energy so that I'm not wasting it running around trying to guide people who don't want it.
Right.
That's annoying. So then the last type are reflectors. Reflectors are about 1% of the population. And for them, if you look at their body graph, they have no centers defined. So they will have gates, like they'll have certain colors, but they won't have any of the large shapes defined, like colored in.
Interesting. Okay.
So what happens with them is they are, they're basically like, they're controlled by the moon. So when I was going over all the authority types, reflectors are designed to wait a full lunar cycle on big decisions, because they're feeling into all of the transits as they happen. And so they're kind of like picking pieces from people when they're around them. And they kind of, I joke when I've met, like, consciously known of about like 3 or 4 reflectors that
I know one. Yeah.
And there's kind of like you can't grasp them. Like, there's kind of like a ephemeral sort of feel to them. And it's because they're really designed to reflect back to society. Gotcha. So it's really about like, they're the mirrors for like how we're doing, basically.
Right.
And they're really is around like being like surprised. So yeah, they're fun. They're really fun. But it's good to know when you're around one, because they're very, very sensitive to the energies that they're around.
That is definitely something that I've noticed in the one that I know.
Yeah.
So, okay. This is all amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like we could talk for like 2 more hours on this. Totally. But if somebody wanted to get their chart done, like, okay, I'm sure you can just find some cheap free thing on the internet. But like, all the ones I give, I'm always like, you guys, don't be looking this stuff up and then like take it as the holy grail of who you are. I always recommend going to a practitioner. So what resources would you recommend? And we'll put links with the information for the podcast too.
There's like, I like to read charts off of a site called Genetic Matrix.
Okay.
There's a ton of human design body graph sites at this point. I will say that another site that I like is Jovian Archive, and you can get a free chart from that. And that site actually has predominantly all of Ra's. So Ra Uru, he changed his name to that after he downloaded human design. That's a lot of his original teachings.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I really like, if you're going to go sort of like, I want to do this on my own and like look everything up, I like going to source material. Okay. I like going to like Origin, get that, and then we can kind of play with it. Right. But it's basically like, you want to kind of go to the person who brought it.
Yeah, of course.
And then sort of go from there.
Strong foundation. I said strong foundation, and then you can grow your branches up.
Exactly, exactly. So like, I trust Jovian Archive to have good information on there if you want to just self-study. I also recommend readers, just because we're going to have our different takes on it, and you can even try out different people, because everybody's going to look at your chart slightly differently. And you're going to have different interactions with each reader. So of course I do readings, my own.
How could they book with you if they wanted to hire you?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, which is sophiefletcherphd.com. I don't specifically have, I don't specifically have human design listed on there, but you just email me through that website, and I'll get it, and then we can chat about it. That's the best way to sort of get in contact with me. And I love doing human design meetings. Like, I mean, as I said, like, people come over and that's immediately what we're doing with people, because it is that thing of like, I will do this for free. Like, I would just talk to people about human design forever. I do charge for it when it's a reading, because it is part of my job. And I also really believe in energy exchange.
Yeah. Well, you have a shit ton of education. You've spent a shit ton of time learning all of this. And so how long does a reading usually take? And like, what's a normal charge for it for people to expect?
So a normal reading with me is around 75 minutes. Okay. And it's $175.
Okay.
We do it on Zoom so that I can record it, and then you get the recording and you can listen
awesome.
to it over and over and over again, because generally we'll go over a lot of information,
Right.
and I want you to be able to, yes, take it in on the call as much as you can, but then sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to digest it yourself. You have to start playing with it and experimenting with it. And it really depends on what level the person is in terms of their own human design journey. Like if you have studied it for a while, we can do a different reading. Then if you're new, I'm going to do more over the basics, not the basics, but like the foundational pieces, because it is one of those systems where you can go deep, 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 deep. You can go forever.
Yeah.
I definitely have not reached the bottom of human design. I don't think there is a bottom of human design in terms of the study and all the nuances. But really, it comes down to like getting in alignment with your type, your authority, your profile, which we didn't talk about, and like just getting those down and like experimenting with those, practicing with those. And that's going to be like 90%.
Right.
Then we can go
and so,
but
I would think it would be like I'm sure there's people who just read charts, but like with the other type of work that you do with people, I would recommend going to somebody like Dr. Sophie Fletcher, who can read your chart and then help you explore all these avenues with her brilliant technique.
Yeah, because it really points to a lot of like, it can be pain points. It can be things that you've struggled with in your life. It can be conditioning pieces. It can be, trauma.
Right.
Really impact a person's chart and how they express it. And so it really is like, I love doing the combination, because it's kind of like, okay, this is like some blueprint, some like foundational pieces. Let's also look at like what's in the way or what's going on inside of yourself.
Right.
And really that's why I call it that deconditioning process, because it's really like you getting back to yourself. That's it. That's all it is. Like, you be you. Yeah. Because the world needs you. The world doesn't need another person.
We don't need another copy.
Unique light. Exactly.
Yes, absolutely. Well, oh my God, this has been awesome. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me. And I always ask everybody, if there was one thing you would want everyone to know, what would it be?
Be your own individual self.
Perfect.
Like, get back to that. Just know, that I think that the self-awareness journey is the greatest journey that anyone can ever go on. No, it's not easy. No, it's not sunshine and rainbows and unicorns at all times. But like, what else is more important than being yourself?
Right.
Than being, again, your unique light, your beautiful being in this world that only you can bring.
The world deserves that.
We have zero idea how long we're here. We have zero idea. So be you. You're here for a reason. I believe every single person has a purpose. Like, if that's just to, be a light in the grocery store, great, do that. If it's to like save the world, great, do that. Like, I don't care the degree, but it's like, how can you live your best life while we're here?
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. Beautiful. Yeah. Can't agree more. Oh my God. All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. And for anyone listening, I'll make sure and put the links to the things that she recommended and also her website if you'd like to sign up for a reading. Perfect. Okay. Well, take care. Have a great evening. And hopefully we'll see you all next week. Absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 12 of the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast that live streams every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in again. Have a great week.